Yeah. So maybe this is and I know Adam, you want to jump in.
I just
Do
want
you
to
want
respond to
to
what you said, but
respond?
yeah, I want to
Yeah,
respond to what you had
please.
said. I think what sometimes, and I think both you and Richard do this sometimes. You guys sparse things out, or you're like you're
Compartmentalized.
yeah, yeah, that's a good word. You're compartmentalizing things a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like
Guilty for sure.
yeah, like the private and the public and like what's being like done by like some of the government officials are inextricably linked, right? So you know and just to use like your example for Coca-Cola, I'm not saying this has happened, but like just to kind of
Of
like
course.
use this as like an example, Coca-Cola wants to sell more sugary drinks in black neighborhoods, right? Because black people, let's say black people drink a shit ton of Coke.
Well, in
And
general, but they're willing to do it in black neighborhoods.
yeah,
They
yeah,
think
yeah,
that's more
but
successful, right?
they that let's say like that's their market for this particular locality, right? Black people. And
That's
the
not a stretch, right?
black people don't want that, right? And so they're trying to vote in representatives that are anti sugary ass drinks in my locality, right? And now when you come to like redistricting, for example, and they're doing the redistricting and they've done it in a way to marginalize your voice in
Disenfranchised
your
black
community.
communities, right?
That is, I hate to like say like conspiracy, right? Like I don't want to say like conspiracy
Yeah.
theory, but like that is like those politicians are funded directly by Coca-Cola, right? So Coca-Cola comes to the guy, I'm going to give you $50,000 to make sure my stuff gets through. Politician
Right.
comes, we redistrict, your voice matters less, and you don't even have to take it like that for that, right? You can look at like the lawsuits that are like currently open right now, right? Like every single lawsuit that's open right now is geared at restricting your voice. Every single one that's right now currently pending is looking to like your voice to shut up. I don't want to hear what you have to say. Close it a little bit so that we can get through what we want to get through. Like these things are linked, right? Like, and yes, it is probably overall driven by money or whatever the case is, but all these things are intertwined, man. I don't think we could just say like it's
Yeah. And maybe you're right. Maybe it doesn't matter, but I guess I always just think these distinctions are worth mentioning. Like the intent to make money at all costs is to me it is inherently different than like the targeting. Like I understand unintended consequences, right?
Mhm.
Like, and we have to consider those things, right? And like I even understand to say that like unintended consequences can be racist or have disproportionate impacts on certain communities. But I just think it's patently different than like the assassination, right? Or like the intentional targeting of a community. Like because if they could sell this to sugary drinks in the other neighborhood, they do it too. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It's all about green. It's not about color. And maybe this is not even worth me saying because the consequences are what matter. If X community gets the sugary drinks and gets diabetes, like, right? That's all that really matters. So I don't even want to spend too much time on
No,
this
but and
topic.
I think that's
I
like
just
the
think it's worth
frame.
flagging the
Yeah.
facelessness of the beast.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I mean, just definitely real quick. I mean, I agree. I mean, the whole mode is selling, making money. It's making money. The whole system is built on exploitation. That's the nature of capitalism, to capitalize. That's what's to capitalize off another. So exploitation. So it's tied into making money. Now, who suffers from the exploitation the most? We can review that. We can review that through history. We can review it to present moment, and we can see a mold. So even though I see that we have to admit that capitalism is built on exploitation, is built to capitalize. And if we have to come to that grip first, because some people think that it's cool, it's good. Hey, if they got to lose out for me to get my money, so be it. That's the nature of it. It's a race. So when you're dealing with exploitation, now let's get out. Let's cross that hurdle. Who's being exploited the most? I am. Oh, okay, let's put it on the table and see. Let's see.
But when it comes to exploitation, though, exploitation happens to those who are most vulnerable. That's the thing about it.
True.
Exploitation happens. They pick the path of least resistance, and unfortunately, Black and brown communities have been conditioned over the years, over these centuries of America, to say, okay, I mean, between all the things that have happened, say, okay, this makes these population easiest to exploit. And when we look at some of the things that are in place or not in place in those communities to defend itself and to empower itself, when you match them up side by side, it's like, okay, no, missing this, no, don't have that. They can't defend themselves because, again, our communities are playing catch up, and in the process of catching up, capitalism does just that. It exploits. So, yeah, so to a certain degree, it's not color, but to a certain degree, it is, because, again,
the outcomes have real ramifications to different communities. Absolutely,
right. because that's where so much easier to exploit. Say, okay, I'm going to go. This is where I'm going to go with it. Just like I made mention about with a lot of law enforcement with bloated budgets. They know, but then you have these communities who don't have the political power. They don't have the economic power, the economic base, the political base that mainly like a lot of Black and brown communities to fight back politically and economically against saying, okay, against the lies against their community.
And I got a question real quick for everybody. Knowing the nature of capitalism business, how it works, do you think that it's left up to chance on the outcome of business when you're looking to make money?
No, they're very strategic. They're very strategic.
What do you mean?
They're organized.
Yeah. What do you mean?
For instance, like just rallying off a statement, Charles, you said, he was like, definitely the outcome shows ramification of being ethnically charged. He was like, definitely the outcome.
Not ethnically charged, but just there is reality, right? Like if this community gets hurt, then like that happened, and we have to like take that into account and like govern ourselves accordingly.
But I mean, it's framed.
I'm just saying motivation was the only thing that I was trying to flag.
Yeah, and that's what I'm.
Motivation is green. Maybe outcomes can be brown or white, but those are somewhat unintended consequences.
I mean, okay, you're looking at the outcome, but you're not going to look at it like, for instance, prisons. Prisons are privatized organizations. They know their customers are prisoners in the prison. That's their customers. That's their business. Do I leave it by chance?
For private prisons, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Do I leave it by chance that I'm going to get them in there? Or if I'm putting millions and millions and millions of dollars, especially when we talk about big money, I'm not going to leave it to chance. Do you think the person who's in the business of private prison cares what color the people they get in, right? Because as long as it's people, it's people. Don't get me wrong. Again, I think it's an argument that's worth going down. But I just think even if that's the business model, I
that goes back to the vulnerable community that they can pull from.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure, which is worth exploring. For sure.
It's like I don't think they care, but the reality that they know what their crop is going to come from, majority.
Well, I think
it's a reality that they know that there's going to be more Black people they're going to be pulling from. I'm just saying, like, so that is a relation between that to be like, I don't have to care because I know where it's going to come from, because the mind frame and the mind state of these people have been conditioned, which Steve has used several times, that's going to lead them to me. And my lifestyle and how I'm living personally is helping.
Yeah, and to know that and do nothing about it is arguably criminal or unethical or immoral, right? Like that's worth flagging for sure.
So
you and I wouldn't argue that ever.
Yeah. So in life, it's like, just real quick, I'll let you, Adam. I know Richard, you're gonna real quick. Like life is like, to me, it's like you have this real shit that's going on one current, and then you have this straw man kind of shit going on the other side. And that's what, if anybody knows about business and know about straw man and corporation and title, you have this model set up. That's what the whole UCC or Universal Commercial Code comes into. Like a whole mold. That's what I'm using as a model. That it's like this fake kind of paper life that like everything is like black and white, and then you got the real life, how everything is connected, everything is tied in, and people just, and that's the whole sense of the problem right now with people. It's a disconnection where no one feels like where it affects them. That's even when we were talking about, Charles, with people eating vegan, eating cleaner. They feel a disconnection with animals, so they don't really sweat it. There's a disconnection in life, period, regardless of subject. And people that are in place to control know this and rally and take advantage off of those disconnections. And it channels out and really intertwines in a lot of ways. And people, I don't really, but in real life, yeah, it's right there in your face.
Right.
Like
and outcomes are the most important. Outcomes are always going to be the most important thing to measure. There's no question.
I don't think because outcomes are intertwined with the spawning. The outcome and the income is meted at one, because I can't just keep leaving. I can't have a bunch of outcomes just by chance happening. That's not how people make shit happen.
No, and you should change policy or behavior to get different outcomes.
Yeah, I want to control it to get the outcome I want. I don't want to.
And the general person, the community at large, us, everybody, our job is to take steps to change outcomes. That's what that's what we should be doing, right?
Yeah.
Forget, because motivations may be one thing, but outcomes are what matter. And so if we can affect outcome, if brown community stops getting sugary drinks and health improves,
but
then how do we do that?
I would beg to differ. Motivations are very, from my personal way, is important to me, because it's like when you solving a crime, like people want to know why. They want to know the motive. This is the question that the one question out of all questions: what, where, when, how, who, that ponders the mind of man is why in anything.
But money, though, I thought that was the one thing we all agreed on. It was that at the end of the day, money is the motivation. So if you stop people's money, which is, there's ways to do that via policy, etc., you can change outcomes.
But the money is just a tool. The money brings vanity. It brings people their lust and their vanities from their heart. They be able to do them out in the open. Money is a tool that you use to just wow the fuck out. You do want to buy shit, or some people, not everybody, but you want to do what you want to do. It's not really the money. Money is a reflection of the tool to bring your desires out in the open. So I want to discover the motivating factors behind your behaviors so I can know how to address the situation. I can't know where I'm going unless I know where I'm coming from. That's something that we touched on last time too. Like, what direction do you know where you're going if you don't know the origin? You're just like, well, let's go forward. What's forward? I don't even know where it's backwards. So I have to know the motivation so I can clearly get into your mind state to know how you think, and I can know how to deal with you more accurately. That's profiling. So I would argue that the motivation is just as important as the outcome, because without the motivation, there is no outcome.
Go ahead, Adam.
Go ahead. Go, Adam and Richard. Go ahead.
I think that to kind of build on what he's saying a little bit, if you take what you're saying to its extremities, you could use that justification to say that slavery wasn't about thinking these people were less, but really they just wanted the money from the picking the cotton, right?
And that have to work.
That was their ultimate motivation. It wasn't because they really just saw these people as less than and were doing this concerted effort to subjugate an entire race. They just wanted money. But for sure, right? Money is part of it, right? They wanted some money. They were cheap and labor and whatnot.
If it wasn't lucrative, they wouldn't have done
free labor, not cheap labor, free labor.
Free labor.
But it by that reasoning, you could go down a very long line of things and effectively cancel out racial discrimination, gender discrimination, a lot of these things across the board, I feel like. But I don't think anybody would look
sad that I've brought this argument up, because I feel strongly about my position, but it's almost a waste of time, because we should be talking about how to fix problems. And I'm I don't want us to spend too much time on this, but I do feel firmly about, at the end of the day, if something isn't lucrative, people won't do it. Slavery included. It was difficult.
I disagree.
In the slaving business. Think about it. You lose ships. It's expensive. But they made an ass load of money and they didn't have to work.
Yeah, there's cake owners that won't sell their cakes to gay people, losing money because they don't believe that they're worth it. I don't.
Well, then you have to see money for what it's worth, because money is a representation of value.
Richard. I know Richard was still. But I know Richard was waiting for a while. I saw him want to talk.
Yeah, no, Charles and I are aligned on this. I kind of feel like, I'm not saying that it's not, but I'll take it a step further. I'm not saying that it's not productive to understand what people's motivations are. I just know now that if you fix and put restrictions around what the outcomes and really the benefit of some of this stuff is, I think you're more likely to move the needle than spending all of your time trying to prescribe what people's motivations are, whether you know them or not, right? And so I think, again, whether or not it's productive to talk about, people's motivations, I don't know. And to Charles, and I think what everybody's point is that our end objective is to change outcomes. But
right.
I feel like, and it is important. And this is an important point, because when we have this reflexive response to constantly prescribe people's motivations based off of what outcomes are and say, well, you are inherently racist, or you are inherently biased, or you are inherently evil, we've gotten to the point now where, independent of the circumstances, if the outcome is this, then it is reflexively racist, or is reflexively sexist, or is reflexively this. And I don't want to say people are tired of it, but it doesn't leave room for like a spectrum of there could be a lot of different contributing factors to why things look this certain way. And we've created this environment where to ask yourself that question, right, and legitimately evaluate the circumstances on how you got there, is to question like your alignment with, like, I don't say democracy, but like, I'm struggling to find the words. But I think there's real danger in reflexively always saying that, independent of people's motives, like, if the outcome is this, then it is this. If the outcome is this, then it is racism. If the outcome is this, then it is bias. There's danger in that.
No, I don't think that's what's being said, though. I don't think that they're saying, like, because it's this, it's racist. I think they're saying that because it's this, you do need to look at the motivations to make sure that it's not racist, especially given the historical context of how certain marginalized groups have been treated in the community, right? Like, it's like actually the opposite. They're saying, okay, we see this. It's really shittily impacting this particular group. Like, historically, this group has, been bent over many, many times. Maybe we should look at the motivations behind this to make sure that it's not driven by something that is less benign. Well, I don't want to say that money is less benign, but if it's something a little bit more insidious,
insidious,
yes.
Let's get Steve his.
But a part of what's insidious, but the problem is this: we go back to what came first, the chicken or the egg. But what came first, capitalism or racism? What was in place? What birthed the other? Did racism birth capitalism, or did capitalism birth racism? And racism was from my reading, was a byproduct. Said, okay, in order to exploit this new land, these are the people we're going to have to exploit. These are the resources we're going to have to steal, and this is what we're going to have to do based on capitalizing on this wide open new frontier. So what came first? And so with that, you have to look at it from the standpoint of say, okay, now how do we now look at capitalism? Because to me, capitalism is amoral. To me, it is. It's amoral. It's just like anything in nature. It's reciprocal. It's even exchange. That's the nature of that's how you maintain a balance. I give, but I also receive. That to me is honest capitalism. I see where capitalism goes wrong, because they say it's what was the terminology? It'll come back to me. But where capitalism goes wrong is when you, that's right, supply and demand. But where it goes wrong is when you manufacture demand. When you manufacture demand, when you put things in place and make something hard to get that shouldn't be hard to get. When you put all kind of barriers in place, which there should be an even, easy flow, and so you create a greater demand for something that does instead increase and higher demand for something that shouldn't have that great of a demand for. So, we have to really break it down to say, okay, with racism, where does it play in the full scope of capitalism, because from my readings and studies, that racism came up out of capitalism.
We got Adam, and then I'm trying to get in real quick.
Really, so regarding why we look at motivations and why it matters, and actually crafting a proper solution to that wrong that's having a disproportionate effect on a particular community. Think about Florida, right? Like right to that example we were using before about voting rights, right? Everybody came together, voted. We were like collectively, you know what? We're disenfranchising a lot of people for no real reason from voting, right? Let's get this thing so that, past felons can get back their right to vote. People voted on it. Overwhelmingly, people are like, let's get them that right to vote. Now, the Republican came back behind and they were like, oh, well, now you got to pay all those fees first before you can vote.
Yeah.
Because you didn't study their motivation when you designed the remedy that you were looking for, you're in the exact same, not exact same, because people paid off some things.
I disagree.
Yeah.
We knew their motivation was just to stay in power because they know that blacks vote Democratic. That never changed.
Mm-hmm.
That should have been on the table when they designed it, because that was everyone always agreed that was the motivation.
Right. And I would say one of the reasons why, like I said, it's not one outweighing the other. Everything plays an exact equal weight to me.
For sure.
But it's important to know the motivations from Black people angle, from my angle, because what I noticed with Black people, especially growing up with people I'm around, they always want to have this benefit of the doubt and give these quote unquote people a chance. Like, I'm like, you don't get it yet. That's why you in dream state. And it's like, we're gonna overcome someday. They're gonna help us out. They're gonna have a heart one day. Like, and because you don't know the motivating factors, you're not jumping up off the couch and doing what you have to do, because you still think it's gonna work out for us. They're gonna see that we some good people. They're gonna see that we nice. They're gonna see that we're not as bad, and they're gonna give us a chance. Because but if you really know the motivation, discover some of the malice, you're gonna have to start thinking differently, because your life is on the line and it's pressed a lot more. And this dream state that a lot of Black people are caught up in, because they just don't want to face what I see the reality. Not all, I'm saying like a lot, especially the poorer ones, the more hopeless ones, the more just take whatever they can get in life and have no kind of step up and control. They just really submit, really docile. They don't really know why they're doing it. Because they talk amongst ourselves, like a lot of Black people come to me, but why are they doing this to us? But why are we almost crying? I said a little bit like that's like almost like we don't do anything. We're good people. I'm a good person. I go to church. I work. I never got a speeding ticket. Why are they doing this thing? So I'm like, you don't get it yet. You haven't really discovered what these the motivation is, what's going on with these people, like, because and it puts us in a dream, and it's more of a crucial state, because that dream state is inhibiting us, and it's preventing the self-reliance I see and the necessary, because once you're able to know, your fear goes away, and when your fear goes away, you become more active, you become stronger, your self-esteem raised, like I said, you become more self-reliant, because you don't know. You're in limbo. You're wondering why. You're just hoping that it's gonna go good for you one day, instead of recognizing what's going on, cutting from A to B to C, getting up on it and start changing your individual life first to impact you and your family around you, and then outside of that, others. Then this is what we have going on probably internally, especially in Black people, especially in the hood. Like, it's this dream state, because they're not in touch with reality. They're still like, after 450 plus years in the U.S. alone, like maybe one day they'll ...
Go ahead, Richard. I want to hear you.
I have a question. Adam, do you legitimately think that the DeSantis move to make, with the whole fees and for felons or former convicted felons, was racially motivated and not just a power play to stay in office? Legitimately. I said legit. I'm not trying to be condescending. Do you think that it? No.
I understand what you're saying.
Because I legitimately, again, it's back to Charles's point. I think the incentive was more of a power play, and he was willing to allow Black people to disproportionately be impacted by it. But to say that it was racially motivated, I don't know, man. Like, again,
inaccurate.
Okay, so I'll say two things, and I want to make sure I don't forget the other one to answer to your point. No, but again, I don't think you can separate these two things. No, I don't think he was like, I just want to hurt black people, so I'm not going to let them vote. But I think from not allowing people's voice to be heard, knowing that they're going to vote on matters that are important to them, that might not be in line with yours, is that, right? Like, that's it. That's the connection. That's it right there. Like, the whole point of the process is to push policies that are going to be hurting you. So, yeah, for me, that is like a conspiracy of racism against, or a systemic racism against a particular group. But to go back to the other point, and I just want to say before I forget it, because we're throwing a lot of stuff around, is that if everybody knew that and understood that the whole purpose of it was, to disproportionately affect black people and keep them from voting, then he wouldn't be able to pass those poll taxes, the equivalent of poll taxes, like he did, right? That goes to the motivation, right? Because they're saying, this ain't about y'all being black. We just trying to get them fees, bruh. Like, but that's why the motivation matters, because if we understand the motivation, we can stop them from doing those things, right? Like, we can say, like,
it was never about the fees. Though.
Yeah, no, you and me know that, right? Like, you and me know that, so because we're on this side of it. But their argument is that that's not why. That's not why we're doing it. We're not doing it just to hurt black people. We're doing it because you owe money to the court system and the court clerk for this and this and that, and before you should do it, you should pay your fees. That's why the motivation.
Popular with conservative.
That's why the motivation matters, right? Like, that's why the motivation. Because if we can't identify and be like, you know what, this is why they're doing it. They're trying to discriminate against black people, so their voices don't count. Then you get things like that, where you can get a poll tax passed, because we're like,
Yeah, I think one of the things where it comes down to motivation, and Richard, correct me if I'm wrong on this, what it's saying, is that a lot of times, I think it's important, but to a degree, I'm hearing Richard and saying that once we get there and understand the motivation, it's like, okay, it seems like the conversation stops at the motivation as opposed to starting to get into process. Because that is one thing when you're dealing with anybody in any type of conflict. Yeah, motivation is very important, but there's a conflict that you say, okay, this is why you're doing it. And that does speak to your strategy of how to deal with it. But I think something that we said previously is, how do we get out of that cycle of, because a lot of times we'll say, okay, it's racist, and stop there. It's this, and it stops there. And you'll call it what I'm being real, and I'm calling it what it is. Okay, now that we've called it, what processes and steps are we now going to take to deal with the situation based on it being called this and identifying this as the motivation?